Our next question is from Stephen, and Stephen has been waiting for his question to be answered for a bit of time. Sorry, Stephen, but here we are. Stephen has recently become aware of the concept of aphantasia, which is the lack of the mind's eye, the lack of the ability to visualize with the mind. I've always thought that what I experienced was the norm, the normal. I'm reading Tom's Park now and have been meditating twice daily for about 6 to 8 months using the binaural beats. I don't seem to be able to visualize anything through the mind despite the consistent effort, intent, and desire. In fact, I can't even visualize those whom are most important to me and I love so deeply, my daughter, wife, or parents, nor a simple thing like a shape and a color of an orange. You've mentioned in the past that we can then use our memories. However, I sadly don't remember much in detail, potentially also due to the fact that I don't have imagery in the mind. So, one of his questions is the avatar who lacks this ability have a different way of perceiving? Or is it the IUOC or my being?
Well, that's a good question. Is it the consciousness or is it the avatar? It could be either. It could be either or a mixture of the two. The avatar sets constraints on what you can do. So if you have an avatar and that avatar has a very weak visual cortex, which is that part of the brain supposedly that processes pictures, or maybe it just doesn't have so many nerve endings going to that particular part of the brain or whatever, then it could be coming from the avatar. On the other hand, if it's consciousness and the consciousness has a belief that it can't visualize, then it won't be able to visualize. So it could be from either side or a mixture of the two. Typically, people who don't visualize do feel. They feel things. And they get all the same information. So they get information. Instead of putting that information into pictures, they feel it. Now, this gets a little odd here because when I talk to people like that, now I tend to be a visual person. Most males tend to be more visual, females not so much. But when I talk to a person and they were doing some sort of a thing where they were describing what they saw, and they said, I don't see anything. I don't get any visuals at all. But what I felt was, and they go on to describe a scene, and the scene had colors in it. It had all sorts of visual things in it. There was a truck. The truck was bright red, and the truck turned a corner just up ahead, and out of the truck there, and they go talking about this story. So it had trucks in it, it had streets in it, it had trees in it, it had colors in it, and yet they didn't see a thing. They felt all that. And I asked you, well, how did you get all that information? And they say, I don't know, I just know it. It's just the way it was. And then they say, I felt it, I guess. So they don't really know how they got it, but they're getting the information, but they don't feel like it's being expressed in a picture, like they're looking at a picture. And I think a lot of this just has to do with the way we define in our own minds what it is we're doing. Obviously, he gets visuals with his eyeballs. He walks around, he sees his wife, he knows his wife by sight. He doesn't confuse his wife with his daughter or his son. He doesn't walk into walls because he can't see doorways. He sees things, and he acts appropriately to the things he sees. When he's in a dream, he does the same things. He moves around, he interacts with stuff, he doesn't walk into walls, he does things, and he gets along just fine, just like he does when he's awake. So when he's in a dream, he's just getting this from mind. When he's in a virtual reality, he's also getting that in mind. So when he's awake and he sees his wife and his daughter and his son in the doorways, that is him decoding a data stream. He gets a data stream that has all that in it. He decodes it. He interprets that data stream, and he sees a wife and a daughter and a son in doorways, and he interacts with those appropriately. So he is getting data, and he is turning it into pictures because he sees them when he's awake. Now, he's not awake, and he's remote viewing, or he's gone out of body or something. Now it's different. He's still getting the data stream, but somehow he can't turn that into pictures because I don't know why exactly he decides he can't do that, but he decides that that doesn't happen, that he doesn't get any pictures. Now, we know already he's capable of taking data streams and turning them into pictures because he does that when he's awake. He's a consciousness, gets a data stream, and that data stream is the avatar doing whatever it does. So he can get data, turn it into visuals, and live. But he goes to sleep or goes out of body or remote views or meditates, and suddenly this ability to get data streams and turn them into pictures disappears. Can't do that anymore. I suspect it has a lot to do with a belief that you can't do it, with a belief that you're not good at it, that you just don't visualize very well, that pictures are hard for you to keep. Well, it may be that that part of your brain that allows those things to happen in an awareness for your consciousness is not wired particularly well for that, but it's more likely that it has to do with a belief of yours. You believe that when you're in these states with your eyes shut, you won't be able to see anything. How could you see something with your eyes shut? Maybe just that simple. Once you shut your eyes, well, you don't see anything anymore. Could be a belief. It could just be, like I say, the way your brain is. That part of your brain may not allow your avatar to do visual processing very well. The visual processing part might be a little scrambled. It just didn't go together when you were being created in the womb. There may be a thing there going on. So it's hard to separate what's in consciousness, what's in the avatar. But I know that this person is not rare. I have lots of people. Every time I do a seminar, I'll say 10 to 15% of the people say they can't visualize anything. So we're not talking about a rare disease that 1 in 1,000 people gets in their brain matter isn't wired quite right. We're talking about something that happens to a whole lot of people. When they go out of body, when they remote view, they don't get pictures. But they can get amazing feelings. They can feel the color red. They can feel a truck. They can feel a truck going around a corner, you see. They can feel things. They can get ideas in their minds and then describe them. And these ideas are not just, oh, black fog. Yes. Yeah, black fog. Whenever I close my eyes, there's nothing but black fog. No, they dream. They think about things. They think, oh, when I get home, mom's going to be angry. And they may get a picture of mom being angry, or they may just get a feeling of mom being angry. And if you ask them, was that a picture or a feeling? And they won't be able to actually separate those because actually all they're getting is data, and they're interpreting the data. There's really not any looking with the eyes. The eyes are virtual eyes. It's all getting data and interpreting it. So sometimes they get data and they can interpret it in terms of visuals. Other times they don't. I suspect it has more because there's so many people that have that problem. I think it may have to do with if you don't feel confident about what you're doing, then you find some problem that you can say, well, I can't do this because, you know.
Well, it's interesting you say that because his other two questions you've already touched on a bit. What could be the purpose of the LCS to limit his experiencing this ability to see images? Could it be a test or a blockage or filter of some sort? And do you think it could be trained up again? Maybe it was lost somewhere in me growing up or getting distracted by society and beliefs. And you sort of brought
Yeah,
in some of those
yeah.
things.
To that, I'd say no, that I don't see any advantage to the LCS doing that unless, again, it was just a test to see if this person could not figure out the problem. Sometimes you give people a problem just to see if they can figure it out because there's a lot of great learning in the figuring out a problem. But if that's the case, the system's giving it to a whole lot of people. It's not just you, it's like all sorts of people. A large number of people are having the same problem. I think it would be more likely that it's some kind of a fear of failure. If you're remote viewing and you just can't ever see a picture, well, then you're not going to get it wrong. It's a strategy that says, if I don't play, I can't lose. So not being able to see pictures is like, I'm not playing. And it's not that I'm a bad sport and don't want to play. I'd love to play, but I just can't play because I can't see pictures, or I can't play because I have only one leg. There's some reason why I can't play, and that's why. And people use the strategy, uh, I can't lose if I don't play. When they feel anxious about something, they feel not confident about something, if they're afraid they're not going to be successful, rather than do it and find out if they're successful or not, they don't play. They can't do it. It doesn't work. There's something organically wrong with them that is getting in the way. Something is blocking them. And mostly it's just a belief that gives them low confidence, that creates a fear. And not seeing pictures is just one way to slip out the back and not have to deal with it. I think that is more likely the case. Now, there may be 10 different reasons why somebody gets to that point. I'm not saying everybody's doing that because they have a fear of failure. And that fear of failure doesn't have to be something they experience. They may not experience any of that at all, like, oh, I'm afraid I'll just not be able to see things, so then I won't be wrong in this remote viewing because I just don't see pictures. But what they should do is work with what they get. Work with whatever. Say, okay, I'm not getting pictures for whatever reason. Let's not make that too relevant. Let's just say I don't do pictures. So then let me do other things. Let me do sounds. Let me do smells. Let me do ambience. Let me do, big as a landscape, small as a dollar bill. Let them do things like that and think of it as, how does it feel? How does it just seem to them that it is? What does it smell like? So I think if they just ignored the visuals and worked with the non-visuals, they'd probably realize that they were successful. They got a lot of the non-visuals correct. And that will maybe lessen the problem with the visuals.
That's really interesting.
But many people, I tell them, well, if you can't see it, just feel it. Now, how somebody feels a red truck turning a corner, I don't know. It's not the way I process things, but many of them will get information, but swear that it didn't have anything to do with pictures or visuals, but yet they get the information. Well, if you get the information, you get the information. Work with the information you get, and I think you just are not willing to see it as a visual for some reason. One of the reasons I can think of is the fear of failure, but there may be 100 other reasons of why somebody might not want to have a visual.
Could it be that they're just looking for the output in a specific way, perhaps too detailed, and they don't realize that they are getting that information? It's just not visual as they might expect it,
Exactly.
perhaps.
That can be it. Let's say they're expecting to see it like in a movie
Hmm.
or like they're looking at a photograph. All right, I'm going to remote view something. All right, run the movie. Well, the movie never runs, so they don't see any visuals because that's their expectation, and that's not the way it works. The visuals just come as a knowing. Nobody's running a movie or anything. It just suddenly you're aware of things. Now that's you getting the data. Now you have to interpret that data in terms of something, right?
Yeah,
So you take what you see, what you get, then you interpret it into visuals. Oh, I saw a red truck turning a corner. Okay. But if you just get data and in that data you somehow know a red truck turned a corner, see, you're getting
yeah,
all the data, but you're not interpreting that data into the picture. You're interpreting, well, I don't know how I didn't really feel it, but I don't know what other word to use. I
yeah,
didn't see it. It wasn't displayed to me like a painting or a movie. I didn't see it. I just knew it. Well, that's the way all the information comes. You just know it.
yeah.
It doesn't come as pictures or stuff. It's just something you just know. And I think they're struggling with this
Yes,
idea and concept of just knowing. How could you just know something if you didn't
yeah.
see it or you didn't hear it?
Or the
It wasn't,
expectation of this
yeah,
grand vision. I mean, when you get
right.
information and it is visual, you might get just like through a foggy window, just a little hint of it.
Mhm.
You'll get that information, and it says a lot more than just that little bit of that visual, that hint of information. So
Yeah,
it's that perhaps
yeah,
expectation of seeing it, in a grand movie sort of setting. It doesn't
yeah,
always go that way.
yeah. But I think they may be struggling with the issue of just suddenly knowing something.
Right.
I know the scene. I know there's a street, a road, a red truck, and it turns the corner, and I just got that. But no, I didn't see it. It just
Yeah.
came to me as information,
Yeah.
and I can tell you about it, but I didn't get any visuals. It's something like that that's going on.
Yeah.
Otherwise, there wouldn't be so many people. If this were, oh, your visual cortex just isn't wired correctly, 10, 15% of the people wouldn't all just happen to have a visual cortex that wasn't wired correctly. I don't think that's the case. I think most people's visual cortex is doing just fine, thank you.
Hmm.
But when you're getting this information, it doesn't come as a picture for you to look at. It just comes as knowledge that you have. Information suddenly comes to you a millisecond ago, you didn't know that, and now there it is. It's like your imagination is the same way, right? You imagine something, okay? I can imagine a three-legged cow. Oh, there it is. One front leg, two back legs. I see a three-legged cow. So I can imagine it, but I I didn't make a picture of it. Just the concept, just the idea. When I say it, there it is.
And it's
So,
it's almost it's just information. It's not transparent is not the
mhm,
right word, but it's just there it is. There are the elements of it there,
mhm.
you know.
So you just, when somebody says three-legged cow or three-legged dog or chicken with two heads, what do you feel, see? Do you have some sense of a thing that looks sort of like a chicken, but it's got two heads? And if you say, well, okay, I can understand a chicken with two heads. It's a chicken. It's got two heads. That's not that hard to understand. The words are easy to understand, but I don't get any pictures. You do. You're just not calling them pictures.
Yes.
What other people are calling their pictures, you're calling, I just got data, just got knowledge, and I didn't get any pictures. So I think it's more of a definition. It's the way you see the world. It's the way you're describing the world. Now, he talked about if he closed his eyes, he'd have a hard time remembering what his wife looked like or what his children looked like. That's pretty typical. That's pretty typical. If you take somebody, I think almost everybody's like that.
Mm.
I don't think it's just them. If you take somebody and you point out a detail, does your wife have a freckle on her forehead right about here? And most people would not be able to say for sure whether she did or not. She might not, you could guess, but there's very few people that would say, no, she doesn't, or yes, she does. Because details like that, particularly ones we see all the time, we really stop processing them. They're not important to us. They're not significant. They carry no significance whatsoever. So we stop processing them. And when we stop processing them, and then somebody asks us a pointed question, we don't have any idea what the answer is. And it's like, well, I've seen this person every day of my life, for 40 years. I should know if she has, a freckle there, but you can't really remember because you haven't processed that for 40 years or 30 years. You process it the first time you saw her, and maybe for the first week after that, but eventually it becomes a totally unimportant thing in your world. And with that, it's just there, and you stop processing it because it has no significance. Now, if you think that's endearing or particularly cute, birthmark or freckle, well, then you would know, and you'd say, yes, oh yeah, that's a cute thing. I really like that. But there's lots of things in our lives that are that way. We stop processing them because they're so familiar, we don't even notice them or look at them anymore. Only when our attention is brought to it do we notice it. So the fact that you take people and take them into another room and say, does your wallpaper have little circles on it like this, or are those circles this way, the top up and down or the round side down? And most people will go, gee, I can't remember. I've lived 40 years in this house and I don't know, I can't really tell you which way the little things go in the wallpaper because they just stopped processing them a long, long time ago. And it's not anything that's in their memory that is significant.
He asked if it could be trained, and I'm wondering if there's exercises that you could do to sharpen your ability to extract details from
Yeah,
things.
sure. I'm sure you could do that. You could just do memory exercises. Okay. I'm going to look in this room. I've got 3 seconds. 1, 2, 3. Now, describe everything you saw. Write it down on a piece of paper.
Yeah,
Get out of you walk out of the room, so you're not seeing it anymore. Now, describe everything you saw and see how much you leave out. Oh, yeah, there was a chair over there. I forgot all about that. Practice. And with practice, you'll probably find that your memory will start now paying attention to details, whereas before it skips over details. So you train your mind to pay attention to the details,
yeah,
and my guess then you'll start remembering a lot of things you couldn't remember before.
I
So
think
it's not,
so.
yeah, it's not
Yeah.
that, I find out things like that all the time. There'll be somebody will say something about something being unusual, and it's like I've passed by that spot, 100 times. I've driven by that particular part of the street. I go there every time I go to work, I come back. I've probably passed down that street 500 times, and there's a pizza store on that corner. Really? It's that sort of thing, but that's because I don't pay any attention to pizza stores. You often have blind spots where you're not interested. It's like one day, and women are better at that than men in some ways. We were driving, particularly with some things, down the street one day, and my one of my daughters said, "Oh, the neighbors painted their shutters green." And I said, "Really? The neighbors have shutters? I didn't know they had shutters." But she noticed that not only that they had shutters, but what color they were. I had no idea that house had shutters on the windows, because shutters on the windows or not shutters on the windows isn't anything that I particularly will connect with. So I was surprised, and I said, well, okay, next time I'll look. And I looked, sure enough, they did have shutters, and sure enough, they were a bright new green color. But she recognized a color change in something that I didn't even recognize existed. So
It's
it's just,
interesting.
yeah, it's just different ways we take in and process information.
Yeah.
But then I
Well,
can remember things that happened to me when I was 10 years old, and I can replay them just like I had the video, just like I had a videotape of it, and I can replay it. I can hear the sounds, smell the smells. I can see what was going on. I can see the costumes. I can see the dress. I can see every detail about it. Somewhere I was
interest
10 years
kind of a
old.
photographic
Yeah.
memory.
And it's
Christopher
like,
has that, I think.
yeah, so I can see that, but I don't necessarily get to see everything that way. But there's some things I can just go back to many, many years and see with crystal clarity exactly what was going on that time, that day, all around me. Down the street I live on, that I've driven over at least 365 times a year, I've driven down that street, and I had no idea that house had shutters on it.
I think you'll find, Stephen, that this was worth the wait. This was a really interesting discussion on the aphantasia, and I think you have some elements there that may be very helpful for you. So thank you for your question and your patience. Thanks, Tom.
I and MBT Events hope you like this video. If you do, then you should consider being a Patreon member, because Patreon members get early access to our special content. You will also be able to get your questions answered by me in special Q&A sessions, and most importantly, your contribution as a patron member will enable us to produce the content that you're looking for. So thank you.